Hello, thank you for listening to the Jackson Bleachers podcast. It's finally college football season. It's finally back, and this podcast is going to be all college football. We're going to talk a whole lot about the Tennessee-West Virginia game. We're going to preview that game that's coming up this Saturday, as well as hit some of the best games of the weekend, and then we'll finish it off with our best bets of the weekend. But so we'll get started with the Tennessee-West Virginia preview, and it's been a very long and very dramatic offseason, but we finally will get to see the Big Orange take the field again this Saturday in Charlotte. Both Tennessee and West Virginia look a whole lot different this time than right now than they did this time last year, but the Mountaineers have the pressure of living up to high expectations, where right now the Vols don't necessarily have high expectations, just a whole lot of hope from the fans. Tennessee does have a whole new coaching staff, which means an entirely new style of play on offense and defense. Tyson Helton is the new offensive coordinator, and he's going to run more of a pro-style offense than what Butch Jones has run in the past. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Kevin Shearer is the new defense coordinator, and he is in the process of transitioning Tennessee into a 3-4 defense, which people who have followed Tennessee for a while, they all know what happened the last time Tennessee tried to use a 3-4 defense. That was Derek Dooley's last year when Sal Sunseri was the defensive coordinator. They tried to implement a 3-4 back in 2012, and it could not have ended up much worse. But the difference this time around, I think, could end up being the coaching staff, because Pruitt and Shearer both are known as two top defensive minds in all of college football. They both know what they're doing. They've both made it work in the past. And in fact, Pruitt's made it work at two other SEC schools over at Alabama and Georgia, so why couldn't he make it work at Tennessee? He's proven it can work in the SEC, so let's give it a chance here before everybody just knocks it or writes it off as a failed experiment because of what happened in 2012. Because, I mean, I know Pruitt hasn't coached a game yet, but I would definitely trust him more than I would trust a Derek Dooley, just because I would trust just about anybody more than Derek Dooley, so he can't be any worse. He may not be a whole lot better. Who knows? Hopefully he is, but he can't be any worse. Comparing the turnover on the Tennessee staff to West Virginia, they haven't had hardly any. Dana Holgerson is their head coach. He's entering the 8th season at the helm in Morgantown, and he brought back his offensive and defensive coordinator. So Jake Spavital is back as the OC, and Tony Gibson is back as the defensive coordinator at West Virginia. We'll start with the offense first. West Virginia's offense is very explosive. They can put up points in a hurry, and they'll pass the ball all over the yard. But their running game is also, their running game's not their strength, but it's good enough to pick up chunk yardage on the ground whenever they need to, and it's definitely good enough that you've always got to respect it, even though they're a pass-first team. Compare the West Virginia offense to the Tennessee offense, and the Vols have a ton of question marks. But the biggest one facing, or at least the one making the most news all summer, was the quarterback battle. We didn't know who it would be, if it'd be Garantano or Christ, or any of the younger guys, McBride or Strout. But Pruitt and Helton have done a really good job keeping their mouths shut. But all signs right now point towards Garantano, which he never really was impressive last year. There was never a moment where you're just like, oh yeah, Garantano's the future of the Vols. I mean, I think he was the better choice than Dormady last year, but I never once sat there watching a game like, yeah, Garantano's the man. He's going to be the guy he's going to get the Vols back to the top, which, to be fair to him, the whole offense was terrible. I mean, the whole team was terrible. They were 4-8, and he had no favors, no help from the coaching staff at all. But I mean, it's kind of, and I know you can't start. I mean, you could, but you don't really want to start J.T. Stroud, even if you think he's the future of Tennessee football. I get that. You need to redshirt him, but Garantano being the quarterback is not the most exciting thing in the world to me. But on the other hand, I see why you would not want to go with Chris, just because you got him for 1 year. At least with Garantano, you want to give him a try. He's there for another 2 years after this year, where Chris is a graduate transfer. He's a one and done essentially, so why not ride with Garantano? Not real high on Garantano, obviously, but if he's the best option, he's the best option. You got to ride with him. But with West Virginia, there was never even a second thought about who would be their quarterback. That high-powered passing attack will be led by Will Grier, and he's a Heisman favorite, and maybe he should be one of the top quarterbacks taken in the draft, if not the top quarterback taken in the draft come the spring. But he got hurt last year towards the end of the season, and him getting hurt is a huge reason why they ended with the 7-6 record, even though they had such a great start, and the season looked like it had a ton of promise, but they just kind of fizzled down the stretch. But a lot of that had to do with Greer's injury. Without him, the offense really bogs down because that offense is meant to pass. You got to have somebody who can fit the ball in the windows. That's who Will Grier is. Without him, really bogs down. But if he's in, it fires on all cylinders. Back in 2017, Will Grier had the 5th best pass efficiency rating in all of the FBS with a 162.7. He attempted 388 passes and completed 250 of those for 3,490 yards. And he racked up 34 touchdowns on the season but he did throw 12 interceptions. So, I mean, not terrible. I mean, very good numbers, not terrible interceptions, but you would like to see, if you're a Mountaineer fan, that interception number go down. But with the amount of times he throws the ball, you look at it this way. He threw the ball 388 times last year. To only get picked off 12 times is pretty impressive. So, yeah, 12 picks jumps out. That's one a game. But when you look at how many times he actually did throw the ball, it's not nearly as bad as if you took a team like, hopefully, Tennessee this year with the pro-style offense. We'll get back to running the ball a little bit more. 12 picks looks way worse for a team that runs the ball more than it does for a team that threw almost 400 times. So he's definitely the guy. He's one of the best quarterbacks in all college football. And if he wasn't good enough on his own already, he has a ton of weapons to choose from at receiver. David Sills is the guy Tennessee absolutely has to shut down. I mean, they're loaded everywhere at receiver. But David Sills is the one you really got to watch. He led the nation in touchdowns last year with 18. And there are no signs of him slowing down this year. Marcus Sims, Gary Jennings, and T.J. Simmons, and Simmons was actually an Alabama transfer. They're some of the other receivers that the Vols secondary will have their handful with all game long. But again, Sills is the guy. You can't let David Sills beat you. He's Grier's favorite target. He's one of the best receivers in the country, and I think the Grier-Sills combo may be the best quarterback-receiver combo in the country. Cannot let Sills get open. Got to stick him. And speaking of the Vols secondary, this will be a huge test for them on a giant stage. Tennessee seems to be pretty solid at safety with Micah Abernathy, Nigel Warrior, and Todd Kelly Jr. leading the way. But at cornerback, that's a completely different story. The Vols have a ton of young and unproven corners, and they will be baptized by fire Saturday afternoon. As we said, the young and unproven corners, they have a grand total of 2 collegiate starts, one from Balaam Buchanan and the other from Sean Schamberger. Schamberger's start came in Tuscaloosa last year. It was a spot start because he got there. Tennessee was kind of in a pinch. He had to start at the last second, and he held his own pretty well. But that's not what you're looking for from your cornerbacks, only having 2 total collegiate starts, especially when you're playing a team like West Virginia who will throw the ball everywhere. So you take all the lack of college game experience to how young the secondary is, and specifically the cornerbacks are, and that's definitely not a recipe for success against what I believe is the best passing attack in all college football. But before Tennessee fans start jumping all over me, Tennessee is loaded at receiver too. You get Jawan Jennings back, which, to kind of get off on something that isn't necessarily relevant now, how he was kicked off the team last year after the season by the then interim coach Brady Hoke because he put some stuff on social media that was unfavorable about the previous coaching staff. And yeah, he shouldn't have done that, but I mean, he was right. Coaching staff was idiots. It was proven. That's how Tennessee did the impossible, what should be impossible anyway, for the Vols to go 4-8 in a football season. I mean, it doesn't matter how bad you are. The University of Tennessee just does not go 4-8. 5-7 should be the floor, and that should be very rare. 4-8, that's remarkably terrible. And he posted his thoughts on social media, and somehow interim coach who was on his way out had the power to kick him off. But Philip Fulmer took over as the AD. Jeremy Pruitt is the coach. They reinstated him. He's back, and he's going to be a massive weapon for Tennessee this year. He missed a ton of time last year, even when he was actually on the team, because he got hurt. And he's going to be Tennessee's number one wide receiver this year. He needs to have a big game Saturday. Also, Marquez Callaway's got to step up. He showed you how good of a receiver he could be last year in the Georgia Tech game, but like the rest of the offense, he kind of faded out as the season went on. And then a couple of the other receivers, Brandon Johnson, Tyler Bird, and Josh Palmer, all should have big 2018 seasons, and you need at least a couple of them to step up on Saturday. West Virginia, at least on paper, has the advantage in a whole lot of categories, but one place where I think Tennessee has a clear advantage is in the running game. The Mountaineers lost a couple key pieces, and their defense, and their run defense was bad anyway. It was actually, honestly, the Mountaineers' rush defense was terrible, and they lost some of the guys, so they were 99th in the country in run defense last year, and Tennessee has 3 bona fide studs in that backfield. And I think Tennessee's they're going to have to take advantage of the Saturday if they want to win, and I think they will take advantage of it. 2 of those studs in the backfield are just sophomores. That's Ty Chandler and Tim Jordan. Ty Chandler should be the starter. He should be the workhorse and get most of the carries. Tim Jordan, he's a young guy with a whole lot of upside. He should get some carries, a lot of carries this year too. And then you also got graduate transfer Madre London. He'll bring the veteran leadership. He transferred in from Michigan State, where he had a tough time staying healthy for a lot of his career, but when he was healthy, he was really good. And if he could stay healthy, he'll make some huge plays, be a real big impact player for Tennessee, and just be good, be a guy that you don't miss a beat when Ty Chandler needs a break. But let's say worst comes to worst, he gets hurt early in the season, and he can't stay healthy. If nothing else, his veteran presence, that's much needed in a locker room full of young guys with a new coaching staff. So London, whether he's on the field a lot or not, whether he's healthy or unhealthy, he's going to be a big plus. He's a big addition for Tennessee. West Virginia will be the 10-point favorite. At least they are right now. That line may move by half a point either way, but right now they're a 10-point favorite. But I believe Tennessee will be able to keep it closer than that. I wouldn't bet on the Vols to win it straight up, but it wouldn't be a huge shocker to me if they did find a way to pull the upset. I think more than likely it's going to look like a whole lot of Tennessee games have in the past, at least over the past 10 years, where Tennessee hangs around, they hang around, 8 minutes left, Tennessee's got a chance to either tie it, take a lead. They're not going to do it. West Virginia's going to score again. So I would guess Tennessee or West Virginia wins by about a touchdown, maybe 10 points at the most, but I believe Tennessee's going to have a chance to win it. They're just not going to. But, I mean, if they do, it's not going to be a shocker. I think to a lot of people in the college football world, it would be a shocker, but to the people who realize how much talent is on this Tennessee roster, I don't think it will be, because you look at it, you have the talent. Butch Jones was a great recruiter. He just couldn't develop it. So you have all this talent on a roster. If Pruitt, it just depends on how fast Pruitt and his staff can develop that talent that has been underdeveloped the last few years. Because the cabinet, it's not empty. You have plenty of players there. It's just how long does it take to bring them back? That's why I think Tennessee's going to have a huge jump second half of the season. 1, the schedule gets a whole lot weaker. And 2, you're going to have all these guys, these talented players, actually being coached up and developed the right way for the first time since maybe their high school days, some of them ever. And I think that's going to make a huge difference. But, again, to go back, I believe West Virginia will win, but I think Tennessee can keep it closer than most people think, and they'll have a real shot to win it at the end. I just don't think they will do it. The over-under is currently set at 61.5 points. West Virginia fans really want the over to hit there. Tennessee fans, you want the under to hit. Because I think for Tennessee to have any chance to win the game, it's got to be under 61.5. Because with the question marks you have all over that roster, you cannot get into a shootout with probably the best passing team in the entire country and expect to win. 65% of the money, according to oddshark.com, is on the over. So if you think Tennessee can hang with West Virginia or even win it outright, if you're feeling a little bit lucky, it might be worth taking the under 61 points. But if you think West Virginia will run away with it, take the over. I'd be willing to. I'm not gonna bet on a Tennessee game ever, because I think it's stupid to bet with your heart, not your head. But I would be very surprised if Tennessee wins the game and it hits over 61.5. I just don't think that's possible. But been wrong before, I'll be wrong again. And if you listen to the podcast long, you'll realize I'm wrong a lot. But kickoff for this game is 2:30, and it will be on CBS, and that's coming up this Saturday. So that was our short version of a Tennessee preview, Tennessee-West Virginia preview in Week 1. Very exciting. I'm ready to see the Vols take the field again. I mean, you have all this talk, preseason talk, summer talk, but it's all just been talk. We'll finally have something to actually talk about, some on-field stuff to actually talk about that matters, and I could not be more excited. But Tennessee's not the only team that starts off their season on Saturday. There's a whole lot of teams that everybody, in fact, will have at least played one game by the time we get to midnight Monday night. So let's take a look at some of the other good games. I have 5 more games, not including the Tennessee game, that I think are going to be the top 5 games of the weekend. We're going to start off with the one that comes first. That is at 11 a.m. Central Time on Saturday, and that is when Lane Kiffin and the Florida Atlantic Owls will head to Norman to face Oklahoma Sooners. Again, that's an 11 a.m. kick, so the first one of the first games of the day on Saturday. Lane Kiffin and Florida State obviously are coming off a huge season last year. They went 9-3, and they won the Conference USA, and they won the Boca Raton Bowl in their home stadium. They blew Akron out in that game. Florida Atlantic is returning 15 starters, and actually, I mean, I don't think he's going to win just because he's at Florida Atlantic, but they do have a Heisman hopeful in Devin Singletary. He had 1,920 yards on the ground and 32 touchdowns, so player to watch. He's definitely he's good, way better than the Conference USA, to be completely honest with you. Art Briles' son, Kendall Briles, was the offensive coordinator for Florida Atlantic. He's gone. He's replaced by Charlie Weiss Jr. as the new OC. And we're not sure who the starting quarterback is going to be. There's still somewhat of a quarterback battle going on. And as of today, Lane Kiffin has not announced who the starter is going to be, but my guess is it would be DeAndre Johnson. Johnson is a really good quarterback. He came originally out of, I think, Florida State. He got in a lot of trouble at Florida State, transferred over. He played some JUCO for a while and was really good at East Mississippi. And he had a tough time getting some offers, but he is back at Florida Atlantic. And I believe he'll be a starting quarterback this year. And he's definitely good enough to dominate Conference USA. Javon Durante, he's a West Virginia transfer. He's one of the top running backs for this Owls team. And also Willie Wright, DeAndre McNeil, Tavares Harrison, and Jordan Morrell. They're all good wide receivers. I think the Florida Atlantic offense is going to end up being the best group of 5 offense in the country. Will it be enough to hang with or beat Oklahoma on the road? Who knows? But they're a good team. Way better than you would, obviously, if you've kept up with college football, way better than a normal Florida Atlantic team. But on the defensive side of the ball, you got a new defensive coordinator in Tony Piccaro. And then Tim Bonner, he's the stud on the defensive line. You got a couple good linebackers in Azeez Al-Shahir and Rashad Smith. The secondary is pretty solid. They just have an overall good team. And I do think they're the best group of 5 team in the country. And Do I think they're going to ever make the college football playoff? No, I don't. But if they want to be the first team to do that, they got to win this game. Huge game for them. Huge game for both teams, honestly. I mean, the difference is there's more pressure, I think, on Oklahoma because nobody's expecting Florida Atlantic to win the playoff. And if they don't have to beat Oklahoma to have a great season. But if Oklahoma loses to a group of 5 school at home, you can almost write them off for the rest of the season. That's tough to recover, and I don't think it'll happen, but, I mean, it's in the cards. With Oklahoma, this is Lincoln Riley's second year as the head coach. Last season they were 12-2 overall and 8-1 in the Big 12. Their season, they were led by Baker Mayfield last year. Obviously, he's gone. He's with the Cleveland Browns now. And but Kyler Murray is a very capable replacement. He'll start at quarterback more than likely. He's not one of the returning starters, but Oklahoma does have 12 returning starters from a team that lost a heartbreaker in the Rose Bowl to Georgia last year in the college football playoff. I think this is going to come down to this young defense trying to get over that loss from the Rose Bowl. And then you have Lane Kiffin's team trying to prove that they belong on the big stage. Should be a good game. With Kiffin and Florida Atlantic, how good they were last year, and then you have Central Florida last year too. I think the Group of 5 has more respect now as a football conference than they ever, or not as a conference because they're not a conference, but as a whole, I think the Group of 5 has more respect than they ever have in the past, and I think there's a lot of pressure on Florida Atlantic this year to keep that up because I believe they are the best team, the best Group of 5 team. But do I think they're going to win this game? No, I don't. Do I think it can be close? Yes. Oklahoma is, I'm trying to find the line. Oklahoma is a 21-point favorite, and the over-under is 68.5. 62% of the bets are on Oklahoma to cover the 21. But believe it or not, Oddshark.com thinks Florida Atlantic's going to win the game. I think their algorithm may be a little off there, but they do predict Florida Atlantic to win the game. Again, this is one of the first games of the day. That's at 11 a.m. Saturday, and I believe it's on Fox. Moving on, in the 2:30 window, Central Time window, you got Washington at Auburn. And this is basically a road game for Washington. The game's in Atlanta. It's a Chick-fil-A kickoff game. Both of these teams are college football playoff hopefuls. Last year, Washington was 10-3 and 7-2 in the Pac-12. Auburn was 10-4 and 7-1 in the SEC, but they ended the season on a sour note by getting beat by the national champions, University of Central Florida, in the Peach Bowl. Actually, the same building they will be playing in Saturday. Right now, Washington is number 6, Auburn's number 9. Those polls don't really matter a ton preseason because nobody's played yet, but that's where they stand going into the game. Last season, Washington had the 3rd best defense in the FBS, and they returned their 2 key players on offense, Jake Browning, the quarterback, and running back Myles Gaskin. The biggest offensive loss for the Huskies was Dante Pettis, who had almost 800 yards last year and 7 touchdowns. They lost probably their 2 best defensive players of the year last year too, in Vita Vea and Keyshawn Vieira. And then with Auburn, you lost Kerryon Johnson, but you're returning Jarrett Stidham and Cam Martin, who's a pretty good running back. May not be Kerryon Johnson good, but he's a pretty good running back. Auburn does have a couple of key receivers out in Eli Stove and Will Hastings, but to me, this is a much bigger game for Washington than Auburn. And let me kind of clarify that first. What I mean by that is, for Washington, their schedule is not very strong. They only have 2 more opponents left on their entire schedule that are currently inside the top 25, and one of them is ranked 24. That's Oregon. But so if Washington loses this one, they have a better chance of running the table, but the question is, will that be enough? Can you overcome who's losing to the best team on your schedule? Can you overcome that with how weak their schedule is? Where Auburn, on the other hand, they need to win the game, Do I think they're going to run the table and win the rest of the season? Absolutely not. Their schedule is way too tough. They still got road games at Mississippi State, at Georgia, at Bama, and they play LSU, Arkansas, and Tennessee at home. I mean, not that Tennessee is going to be anything worth putting on the resume, but it's a conference game. Auburn has plenty more opportunities to prove themselves, plenty more opportunities to add to that resume where Washington doesn't. But at the same time, they're not going to win all those games. Auburn needs to win this one so that they still have their cushion, their loss that they can take. That needs to be later in the season when the schedule tightens up. But either way, so that leads me to believe, I kind of think, in theory, Washington needs to win this more. The Pac-12 needs this game more than the SEC does. But because I don't think Auburn has the ability to win the rest of the games down the stretch, this is big for them too. But I wouldn't necessarily write either one of these teams off unless if somebody gets blown out, then yeah, maybe. Especially if it's Washington that gets blown out. If Washington gets blown out, you almost can write them off just because they're not going to have enough chances to prove that this was a fluke or that they're a better team. That there's just not enough chances there. But in what's basically a home game for Auburn, they're a 3-point favorite. The over-under is 49. So that should be a good game. That is a 2:30 game on ABC. That is at the same time as the Tennessee-West Virginia game. So I will not be watching that game. But that's probably the best game of the time slot for people that don't like Tennessee. The night game, the best night game. I know Alabama's playing Louisville, but does anybody really expect that to be a game? Because I sure don't. I do expect Michigan at Notre Dame to be a good game, though. This is the College Game Day game. They will be live from South Bend Saturday morning, 8 a.m. Central Time. Michigan is a 1.5-point road favorite, and the over-under in this game is 47 points. Last year, the Wolverines were 8-5 under Harbaugh, and they returned 16 starters. They started 8-2, but they lost their last 3, including a loss to South Carolina in the bowl game. Karan Higdon is a very good running back for Michigan. He did average over 6 yards per carry last season, and the Ole Miss transfer Shea Patterson will be the starting quarterback for the Wolverines. Last year, Michigan's defense was really good, and 9 of their 12 starters on that side of the ball are back. For Notre Dame, they were 10-3 last year, and their 3 losses were really close. And early in the season, they lost to Georgia, who was national champion runner-ups, or the national runner-ups, and were really a play away from winning the national championship. If Tua doesn't come into that game, Georgia's your champion, not Alabama. But so they lost that game real close to Georgia. They lost to Stanford, and they lost to Miami. The Irish have 6 offensive starters back, including quarterback Brandon Wimbush, and he's a threat on the air or on the ground. He threw for 16 touchdowns and ran for 14 more in 2017. And then a quick look on the defensive side of the ball. 9 of those 12 starters are back. And they were a really good defense already last year, and they bring them all back. So expect that defense to stay good, if not improve this year. To me, Jim Harbaugh still has not had a real signature win yet at Michigan, and he needs that bad. This could be that, at least early on in the season, because who knows down the season if Notre Dame fizzles or whatever. But at least in the moment, this would be a signature win for Michigan, one that Harbaugh needs very badly. And on the other side of that, Brian Kelly has had some fairly good success at Notre Dame, but he does always seem to be on the hot seat. And this could be the second year in a row that Notre Dame has hosted a high-profile night game very early in the season that they could lose. They can't let that one happen again. They need to win this one because you can only. It just looks bad to lose these games, and at least they're playing them, but they really need to win one. They can't really afford to lose 2 in a row. I do think both teams will fizzle out as the season goes on, just because they always do. I think Harbaugh's living on a past reputation that he hasn't really earned recently. And Notre Dame is just always overrated. The Irish are the only team in the entire country that can finish at 0-12 and still find themselves in the top 10. Michigan opened as a slight favorite. I said a minute ago Michigan was a 3-point favorite, but that line moved. Now it's even money. 56% of the bets are on Michigan, and 67% are on the under 47 points. Just a couple of trends in this game. Michigan is 6-4 against the spread in the last 10 games, and Notre Dame is 4-6 against the spread in the same amount of games. I wouldn't come close to touching this game, but if you put a gun to my head right now, I'd take Notre Dame at even money, and I would take the under 47 points. So that is the Saturday games that are the best. We'll move on to the Sunday night game, Miami versus LSU. This game will be played at the Cowboys Stadium in Arlington. And Miami, as of right now, is a 3.5-point favorite. The over-under is 48. Miami was 10-3 last year, and LSU was 9-4. I think this will be a very low-scoring game with defenses dominating the day. Miami's defense was third in the country in turnovers last season, and they returned almost all of their key pieces. Add to that LSU has a brand new quarterback, the Ohio State transfer Joe Burrow, who did not even get there till the summer, and he's making his first start. And in his first start, he has to deal with Miami's stout defense, so not really a great recipe for LSU. Even though LSU's defense isn't too shabby itself, Miami does have a really good quarterback. He's a proven senior, plenty of experience in Malik Rozier. Then you look at the coaches. Miami has Mark Richt. LSU's kind of stuck with Ed Orgeron. And yeah, Mark Richt can't ever put together an entire season, but he has proven he can beat any team on any Saturday. And Ed Orgeron's lucky to even have a head coaching job at LSU, and honestly, he just kind of lucked into that. Orgeron hadn't done anything to lead me to believe that LSU can be any better than they were last year, and if I had to bet on it right now, honestly, I think they're going to be worse. And I don't think Miami really has a chance to win a championship this year, just because if you look at Mark Richt's track record, they always fall apart down the stretch. But in a primetime season opener featuring two very solid defenses, who are you taking? I'm taking Mark Richt and a proven quarterback, not Ed Orgeron in a wild card making his first start. So this is going to be kind of an ugly game, I expect. And if anything, I kind of think Miami may run away with this one late. And then so we got one more game, last game of the weekend. It is Labor Day night. Virginia Tech will travel to Tallahassee to play the Florida State Seminoles. Florida State is a 7.5-point home favorite, and the over-under in this game is 57. This is the last game of the college football weekend, and neither team lived up to expectations last year, but they both finished in different directions. Florida State at least finished the season on the high note last year with a bowl win, and they were 3-5. Finished at 6-6, and then won in a bowl game. The Hokies slid at the end of the season, so that season last year ended with a little bit of a bad taste in Virginia Tech's mouth. And then for Florida State, Jimbo Fisher left to go to Texas A&M after the season, and Willie Taggart came in. So the Willie Taggart era will officially begin at Florida State Saturday night. Taggart was the coach at Central Florida before making a quick stop in Oregon to replace Mark Helfrich. And a big reason for Florida's disappointing season last year was their quarterback DeAndre Francois getting hurt on opening night against Alabama. Francois is back this year, and while the Noles might not contend for a championship in Tigers' first year at the helm, I think they'll get back on track in 2018. Florida State brings back 8 more offensive starters, not including Francois. And they're bringing back running back Cam Akers, and he rushed for over 1,000 yards last year. The defense is where most of Florida State's question marks are. They lost a whole lot of guys, just about everybody on that defense. But, I mean, it's Florida State. They always got plenty of talent that has the ability to step up. The question is, will they do it? Virginia Tech is led by third-year head coach Justin Fuente, who really made a name for himself by turning around the University of Memphis' football program. Fuente's offense was outstanding last year, and that should continue this year. They were led by freshman quarterback Josh Jackson. He threw for 20 touchdowns. I believe he only had 9 interceptions, and that was as a freshman. So many people have very high hopes for him as a sophomore. Virginia Tech is kind of in the same boat as Florida State on defense. They had a pretty good defense last year, but they lost a whole lot of guys. So there are a ton of question marks heading into Saturday. This game should be extremely entertaining and a great way to end the first weekend of college football. This should be a really good game. I mean, my head tells me here that Virginia Tech should win because they are a good team. They have a whole lot more continuity. That coaching staff has been there for a while. Florida State has a brand new coaching staff and may be forced to kind of throw stuff together at the last minute. But at the same time, it's hard for me to sit here and think that Virginia Tech can travel to Tallahassee and beat Florida State on an opening night game. It just doesn't seem like a smart bet to me. But either way, who knows what's going to happen. Either way, it should be a great game and a great weekend of college football. So that wraps up our games to watch this week. And now we will get in to the last segment, our best bets of week 1. We got 3 picks and then a bonus pick here that I really like on the board. As always, week 1's a little bit on the risky side because there is no recent on-the-field evidence to back up your bets, but that does not mean you shouldn't try. As always, there's never a guarantee when betting on sports, but that's part of what makes it so much fun. As I said a minute ago, I got 3 games and a bonus pick. So here we go. First game, Western Kentucky. This one's on Friday night. The Hilltoppers of Western Kentucky are plus 35.5 at Wisconsin. They will travel to Camp Randall to open the season against the Badgers. The Badgers are currently number 4 in the nation, and they have a Heisman candidate in Jonathan Taylor at running back. Wisconsin is without a doubt one of the best teams in the country, but they will be without 2 key players Friday night. Wide receivers Quintez Cephas and Danny Davis are both suspended, so Taylor and the rest of the offense will have to step up in their absence. Western Kentucky has been a force in the Conference USA lately, and before Kiffin took over at Florida Atlantic, the Toppers had turned into perennial favorites to win the conference. Western got off to a very good start last season, but cooled off considerably as the season went along. And even with a less than exceptional finish to 2017, the Toppers did pick up a bowl win to end the year. I believe they were in the Idaho famous Potato Bowl last year. Wisconsin should win this game easily, but a 34.5-point spread against a decent group of 5 schools is tough to pull the trigger on for me. And then you add that huge spread to the fact that 2 of their best receivers are out, and it leads me to take Western Kentucky at 34.5. I mean, that to me, anytime you have a spread over 4 touchdowns, it's worth taking a look at. And then you take a team like Western Kentucky, who's not a bad team. They're catching 34.5, and Wisconsin is without 2 of their better offensive players. That's one I'll take a risk on. Second game, this one is Saturday afternoon, I believe, in the 2:30 window. It's Central Michigan plus 17 at Kentucky. Kentucky is the home team. It's at Kroger Field. Central Michigan is coming off 8-5 season, and they finished second in the MAC West. The Wildcats continued their recent trend of starting off a season hot but fizzling out at the end of the year. Kentucky started last season at 5-1 and was only 2 points away from being 6-0. But as the schedule tightened up down the stretch, so did they. They ended up finishing 7-6, including blowout losses to Louisville, Georgia, and Mississippi State. Central Michigan is a very respectable group of 5 team, and catching more than 2 touchdowns against Kentucky is extremely tempting, and for me, just too tempting to pass up. According to Oddshark.com, Central Michigan is 5-1 against the spread in the last 6, and 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 road games. I think the Chippewas cover easily, and honestly, I think they're going to have a chance to win it at the end Wouldn't be shocked at all if they pull off the upset. So that's game number 2. Game number 3 is the late night game. It's the finale Saturday night in the desert. Arizona is an 11.5 point favorite over BYU. This is Kevin Sumlin's debut as the head coach in Tucson, and I love this matchup for the Wildcats. Arizona started 2017 unbelievably well, but the wheels came off the wagon quickly, and the poor season, at least the poor ending to the season, led to Rich Rod being fired. And that opened the door for Kevin Sumlin to come in and do what he does best. It coached one of the most exciting quarterbacks in all of college football, Khalil Tate. Khalil Tate is Arizona's sophomore quarterback, and he is an early favorite to win the Heisman. Tate can beat anybody through the air or on the ground, and he'll be causing headaches for BYU's defense all night long. That defense is coming off its worst season in years, and in fact, BYU is coming off its worst season in years as a team. Now, I know Taylor Mangum is back and healthy again at quarterback, but it will not be enough to beat Arizona on Saturday. I would bet a whole lot of money that BYU will be better than they were last year, but mainly because it's impossible not to be better than they were last year. But it's still going to take some time. And going back to Khalil Tate for a minute, he alone should be enough for Arizona to cover the 11.5 points at home. And honestly, I'll be surprised if the Wildcats don't win by at least 3 touchdowns. Assuming Tate can stay healthy all season, he's my favorite to win the Heisman. I think he's the best player in college football. He's definitely the most exciting player in college football. And the reason he's still under the radar a little bit is because he's at Arizona. The Wildcats usually get screwed on time slots. You play a whole lot of late-at-night games on the West Coast. If he was on the East Coast, he'd be a household name by now. So watch out for Khalil Tate all season long. And then I'm going to wrap this podcast up with a bonus pick, and that is Kent State plus 16 at Illinois. This is a bonus pick because I really would want to bet against Illinois as a 16-point favorite, but I'm not sure if I can trust Kent State enough to pull the trigger. I mean, both teams are an abomination to the great game of football, but Illinois as a 16-point favorite is so tempting to bet against. Both teams were 2-10 overall last season and 4-8 against the spread, so something's got to give here. Lovie Smith is entering his second season in Champaign, and Kent State has the youngest coach in the country in Sean Lewis. I'd be shocked if the Golden Flashes pulled this upset off outright, but covering the 16-point spread, it's definitely doable. If you're feeling extra lucky this weekend, Kent State plus 16 is something worth considering. So those are my picks for the weekend. To recap them, I'm on Western Kentucky plus 34.5, Central Michigan plus 17 at Kentucky, Arizona minus 11.5 versus BYU, and the bonus pick, Kent State plus 16 at Illinois. So those are the picks, and that's the podcast. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week to discuss the actual on-field results of Tennessee, West Virginia, and to get you ready for some of the best games of Week 2 and our favorite the picks against the spread. So thank you for listening, and be sure to join us next week.